of what I call a natural experiment. So those of you that know me a little bit, I'm a scientist at heart, and I have a laboratory, and I do basic science studies, in addition to taking care of patients and do education. So this is what I call a natural experiment. I've mentioned this concept before here, so you may have heard it before. You're going to hear a 19-minute video from the guy who started the concept. The concept is the blue zone concept. You may have heard it before. I'm going to let him describe it and kind of talk about what his observations are of this. What I want you to think about is he's going to talk about confusion. He's going to talk about how confusing things are out there, and in terms of recommendations and what to do. So think about that. And as you listen to his comments about how confusing this could be to people, if you yourself have confusions, those are the kinds of questions you can ask after the video. But then towards the latter half of the video, he's going to kind of give examples of how in nature, natural environment, we can see the things that actually keep us healthy. And then you can ask, well, are these the topics that we're bringing on to you in education? Are we kind of aligned with what this, and we can have a critical discussion about that. So with that in mind, I'm going to try to set up the video now, see if this works. Any questions?
You're going to want to see the screenshots.
See if I can first play the video.
Right.
First, share your screen.
Oh,
Okay.
And then hit more, and then there should be a share sound. Share computer. Perfect. Should be good. Come up in a second. You got it.
Something called the Danish twin study, 10%
Just leave it.
of how long the average person lives within certain biological limits is dictated by our genes. The other 90% is dictated something called the Danish twin study established that only about 10% of how long the average person lives within certain biological limits is dictated by our genes. The other 90% is dictated by our lifestyle. So the premise of Blue Zone is if we can find the optimal lifestyle of longevity, we can come up with a de facto formula for longevity. But if you ask the average American what the optimal formula of longevity is, they probably couldn't tell you. They've probably heard of the South Beach diet or the Atkins diet, and you have the USDA food pyramid. There's what Oprah tells us. There's what Dr. Oz tells us. The fact of the matter is there's a lot of confusion around what really helps us live longer, better. Should you be running marathons or doing yoga? Should you eat organic meats or should you be eating tofu? When it comes to supplements, should you be taking them? How about these hormones or resveratrol? And does purpose play into it? Spirituality, and how about how we socialize? Well, our approach to finding longevity was to team up with National Geographic and the National Institute on Aging to find the 4 demographically confirmed areas that are geographically defined, and then bring a team of experts in there to methodically go through exactly what these people do to distill down the cross-cultural distillation. And at the end of this, I'm going to tell you what that distillation is. But first, I'd like to debunk some common myths when it comes to longevity. And the first myth is if you try really hard, you can live to be 100. False. The problem is only about 1 out of 5,000 people in America live to be 100. Your chances are very low. Even though it's the fastest growing demographic in America, it's hard to reach 100. The problem is that we are not programmed for longevity. We are programmed for something called procreative success. I love that word. It reminds me of my college days. Biologists term procreative success to mean the age where you have children, and then another generation, the age when your children have children. After that, the effect of evolution completely dissipates. If you're a mammal, if you're a rat or an elephant or a human in between, it's the same story. So to make it to age 100, you not only have to have had a very good lifestyle, you also have to have won the genetic lottery. The second myth is there are treatments that can help slow, reverse, or even stop aging. False. When you think of it, there's 99 things that can age us. Deprive your brain of oxygen for just a few minutes, those brain cells die, they never come back. Play tennis too hard on your knees, ruin your cartilage, that cartilage never comes back. Our arteries can clog, our brains can gunk up with plaque, and we can get Alzheimer's. There's just too many things to go wrong. Our bodies have 35 trillion cells. Trillion with the T, we're talking national debt numbers here. Those cells turn themselves over once every 8 years, and every time they turn themselves over, there's some damage. And that damage builds up, and it builds up exponentially. It's a little bit like the days when we all had Beatles albums or Eagles albums, and we'd make a copy of that on a cassette tape and then let our friends copy that cassette tape, and pretty soon, with successive generations, that tape sounds like garbage. Well, the same things happen to our cells. That's why a 65-year-old person is aging at a rate of about 125 times faster than a 12-year-old person. So if there's nothing you can do to slow your aging or stop your aging, what am I doing here? Well, the fact of the matter is the best science tells us that the capacity of the human body, my body, your body, is about 90 years, a little bit more for women. But life expectancy in this country is only 78. So somewhere along the line, we're leaving about 12 good years on the table. These are years that we could get, and research shows that they would be years largely free of chronic disease, heart disease, cancer, and diabetes. We think the best way to get these missing years is to look at the cultures around the world that are actually experiencing them. Areas where people are living to age 100 at rates up to 10 times greater than we are. Areas where the life expectancy is an extra dozen years, and the rate of middle-age mortality is a fraction of what it is in this country. We found our first blue zone about 125 miles off the coast of Italy.
Let me pause there for a second. That is the experiment, the natural experiment. Is you go around the earth and you find the places where people live closer to 100 years of age, for the most part, naturally speaking. No one went there and told them how to live, just the way they do it. And then you review and study and learn from them, what is it that, who they are biologically speaking, and what is it in their lifestyle that actually has contributed to that. And so that's what he's going to do now. There's 4 areas. One is Loma Linda, California, Okinawa. There's an island out of Italy, and I'm missing the 4th one. Costa Rica. There you go. Thank you. And so he's going to go over those right now and talk about what they learned when they actually did the experiment. They went, they visited, they interview people and learn about their lifestyle, and he's going to kind of share with us what they learned from that.
On the island of Sardinia, and not the entire island. The island's about 1.4 million people, but only up in the highlands, an area called the Nuoro province. And here we have this area where men live the longest, about 10 times more centenarians than we have here in America. And this is a place where people not only reach age 100, they do so with extraordinary vigor. Places where 102-year-olds still ride their bike to work, chop wood, and can beat a guy 60 years younger than them. Their history actually goes back to about the time of Christ. It's actually a Bronze Age culture that's been isolated. Because the land is so infertile, they're largely shepherds, which occasions regular low-intensity physical activity. Their diet is mostly plant-based, accentuated with foods that they can carry into the fields. They came up with an unleavened whole wheat bread called nota musica, made out of durum wheat, a type of cheese made from grass-fed animals. So it's hot. The cheese is high in omega-3 fatty acids instead of omega-6 fatty acids from corn-fed animals, and a type of wine that has 3 times the level of polyphenols than any known wine in the world. It's called Cananao. But the real secret, I think, lies more in the way that they organize their society. And one of the most salient elements of the Sardinian society is how they treat older people. You ever notice here in America, social equity seems to peak at about age 24? Just look at the advertisements. Here in Sardinia, the older you get, the more equity you have, the more wisdom you're celebrated for. You go into the bars in Sardinia, instead of seeing the Sports Illustrated swimsuit calendar, you see the centenarian of the month calendar. This, as it turns out, is not only good for your aging parents to keep them close to the family, it imparts about 4 to 6 years of extra life expectancy. Research shows it's also good for the children of those families who have lower rates of mortality and lower rates of disease. That's called the grandmother effect. We found our second blue zone on the other side of the planet, about 800 miles south of Tokyo on the archipelago of Okinawa. Okinawa is actually 161 small islands. And in the northern part of the main island, this is ground zero for world longevity. This is a place where the oldest living female population is found. It's a place where people have the longest disability-free life expectancy in the world. They have what we want. They live a long time and tend to die in their sleep very quickly. And often, I can tell you, after sex. They live about 7 good years longer than the average American, 5 times as many centenarians as we have in America, 1/5 the rate of colon and breast cancer, big killers here in America, and 1/6 the rate of cardiovascular disease. And the fact that this culture has yielded these numbers suggests strongly they have something to teach us. What do? Once again, a plant-based diet full of vegetables with lots of color in them, and they eat about 8 times as much tofu as Americans do. More significant than what they eat is how they eat it. They have all kinds of little strategies to keep from overeating, which, as you know, is a big problem here in America. A few of the strategies we observe, they eat off of smaller plates. So they tend to eat fewer calories at every sitting. Instead of serving family style, where you can sort of mindlessly eat as you're talking, they serve at the counter, put the food away, and then bring it to the table. They also have a 3,000-year-old adage, which I think is the greatest sort of diet suggestion ever invented. It was invented by Confucius. And that diet is known as the Hara Hachi Bu diet. It's simply a little saying these people say before their meal to remind them to stop eating when their stomach is 20% full. It takes about a half hour for that full feeling to go travel from your belly to your brain, and by remembering to stop at 80%, it helps keep you from doing that very thing. But like Sardinia, Okinawa has a few social constructs that we can associate with longevity. We know that isolation kills. 15 years ago, the average American had 3 good friends. We're down to 1.5 right now. If you were lucky enough to be born in Okinawa, you were born into a system where you automatically have a half a dozen friends with whom you travel through life. They call it a moai. And if you're in a moai, you're expected to share the bounty if you encounter luck. And if things go bad, a child gets sick, a parent dies, you always have somebody who has your back. This particular moai, these 5 ladies have been together for 97 years. Their average age is 102. Typically in America, we've divided our adult life up into 2 sections. There's our work life, where we're productive, and then one day, boom, we retire. And typically that is meant retiring to the easy chair or going down to Arizona to play golf. In the Okinawan language, there's not even a word for retirement. Instead, there's one word that imbues your entire life, and that word is ikigai. And roughly translated, it means the reason for which you wake up in the morning. And for this 102-year-old karate master, his ikigai was carrying forth this martial art. For this 100-year-old fisherman, it was continuing to catch fish for his family 3 times a week. And this is a question. The National Institute on Aging actually gave us a questionnaire to give these centenarians. And one of the questions, they were very culturally astute people put the questionnaire. One of the questions was, what is your ikigai? They instantly knew why they woke up in the morning. For this 102-year-old woman, her ikigai was simply her great-great-great-granddaughter. 2 girls separated in age by 101.5 years. And I asked her what it felt like to hold a great-great-great-granddaughter. And she put her head back and she said, "It feels like leaping into heaven." I thought that was a wonderful thought. My editor at Geographic wanted me to find America's blue zone, and for a while we looked on the prairies of Minnesota, where actually there's a very high proportion of centenarians, but that's because all the young people left. So we turned to the data again, and we found America's longest-lived population among the Seventh-day Adventists concentrated in and around Loma Linda, California. Adventists are conservative Methodists. They celebrate their Sabbath from sunset on Friday till sunset on Saturday, a 24-hour sanctuary time, they call it. And they follow 5 little habits that conveys to them extraordinary longevity, comparatively speaking. In America here, life expectancy for the average woman is 80, but for an Adventist woman, their life expectancy is 89, and the difference is even more pronounced among men, who are expected to live about 11 years longer than their American counterparts. Now, this is a study that followed about 70,000 people for 30 years, sterling study, and I think it supremely illustrates the premise of this Blue Zone project. This is a heterogeneous community. It's white, black, Hispanic, Asian. The only thing they have in common are a set of very small lifestyle habits that they follow ritualistically for most of their lives. They take their diet directly from the Bible, Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, where God talks about legumes and seeds, and on one more stanza about green plants, ostensibly missing his meat. They take this sanctuary and time very serious. For 24 hours every week, no matter how busy they are, how stressed out they are at work, where the kids need to be driven, they stop everything and they focus on their God, their social network, and then hardwired right in the religion are nature walks. And the power of this is not that it's done occasionally. The power is it's done every week for a lifetime. None of it's hard. None of it costs money. Adventists also tend to hang out with other Adventists. So if you go to an Adventist party, you don't see people swilling Jim Beam or rolling a joint. Instead, they're talking about their next nature walk, exchanging recipes, and yes, they pray. But they influence each other in profound and measurable ways. This is a culture that has yielded Ellsworth Wareham. Ellsworth Wareham is 97 years old. He's a multimillionaire. Yet when a contractor wanted $6,000 to build a privacy fence, he said, "For that kind of money, I'll do it myself." So for the next 3 days, he was out shoveling cement and hauling poles around. And predictably, perhaps, on the 4th day, he ended up in the operating room. But not as the guy on the table, the guy doing open heart surgery. At 97, he still does 20 open heart surgeries every month. Ed Rawlings, 103 years old now, an active cowboy, starts his morning with the swim, and on the weekends he likes to put on the boards, throw up rooster tails. And then Marge Deton. Marge is 104. Her grandson actually lives in the Twin Cities here. She starts her day with lifting weights. She rides her bicycle. And then she gets in a root beer-colored 1994 Cadillac Seville and tears down the San Bernardino Freeway, where she still volunteers for 7 different organizations. I've been on 19 hardcore expeditions. I'm probably the only person you'll ever meet who rode his bicycle across the Sahara Desert without sunscreen. But I'll tell you, there was no adventure more harrowing than riding shotgun with Marge Deton. "A stranger's a friend I haven't met yet," she'd say to me. So what are the common denominators in these 3 cultures? What are the things that they all do? And we managed to boil it down to 9. In fact, we've done 2 more Blue Zone expeditions since this, and these common denominators hold true. And the first one, and I'm about to utter a heresy here, none of them exercise. At least the way we think of exercise. Instead, they set up their lives so that they're constantly nudged into physical activity. These 100-year-old Okinawan women are getting up and down off the ground. They sit on the floor 30 or 40 times a day. The Sardinians live in vertical houses, up and down the stairs. Every trip to the store or to church or to the friend's house occasions a walk. They don't have any conveniences. There's not a button to push to do yard work or housework. If they want to mix up a cake, they're doing it by hand. That's physical activity. That burns calories just as much as going on the treadmill does. When they do intentional physical activity, it's things they enjoy. They tend to walk, the only proven way to stave off cognitive decline, and they all tend to have a garden. They know how to set up their life in the right way so they have the right outlook. Each of these cultures take time to downshift. The Sardinians pray, the Seventh-day Adventists pray, the Okinawans have this ancestor veneration. But when you're in a hurry or stressed out, that triggers something called the inflammatory response, which is associated with everything from Alzheimer's disease to cardiovascular disease. When you slow down for 15 minutes a day, you turn that inflammatory state into a more anti-inflammatory state. They have vocabulary for sense of purpose, ikigai, like the Okinawans. You know, the two most dangerous years in your life are the year you're born because of infant mortality and the year you retire. These people know their sense of purpose and they activate it in their life. That's worth about 7 years of extra life expectancy. There's no longevity diet. Instead, these people drink a little bit every day, not a hard sell to the American population. They tend to eat a plant-based diet. Doesn't mean they don't eat meat, but lots of beans and nuts. And they have strategies to keep from overeating, little things that nudge them away from the table at the right time. And then the foundation of all this is how they connect. They put their families first, take care of their children and their aging parents. They all tend to belong to a faith-based community, which is worth between 4 and 14 extra years of life expectancy if you do it 4 times a month. And the biggest thing here is they also belong to the right tribe. They were either born into or they proactively surrounded themselves with the right people. We know from the Framingham studies that if your 3 best friends are obese, there's a 50% better chance that you'll be overweight. So if you hang out with unhealthy people, that's going to have a measurable impact over time. Instead, if your friend's idea of recreation is physical activity, bowling or playing hockey or biking or gardening, if your friends drink a little but not too much and they eat right and they're engaged and they're trusting and trustworthy, that is going to have the biggest impact over time. Diets don't work. No diet in the history of the world has ever worked for more than 2% of the population. Exercise programs usually start in January. They're usually done by October. When it comes to longevity, there is no short-term fix in a pill or anything else. But when you think about it, your friends are long-term adventures, and therefore perhaps the most significant thing you can do to add more years to your life and life to your years. Thank you very much.
Is that a TED Talk or
It is a TED Talk.
Not YouTube, but TED.
It is accessed through YouTube, but it is a TED Talk.
Oh,
And if you key in longevity, Dan, his first name is Dan, it'll be the first thing they'll hit.
thank you.
This is in 2009, so this is not a recent talk. Him and 2 brothers did a bike ride from Alaska all the way to Argentina. And I think they learned about the Costa Rica people first, and then they did another bike ride around in the other direction because they liked the one from north to south so much, they decided to go east to west. And that's when they went to Japan and then learned about that. And then National Geographic, when they came back with their observation about the longevity, which is very, you can tell he's a guy who can walk in any bar and make 2 friends within 20 minutes. And so everywhere they went, that's what he did. He just quizzed people about their lives, their lifestyles, and they got interested in this. They came to National Geographic and they commissioned them to go looking for the others. So National Geographic actually pay their treks by the second and the third time to go and look for others of these. And there's a number of National Geographic magazine editions from now probably 15, 20 years ago, where they showcase their findings. They ultimately made a business out of it. And I just heard last week the Adventist Hospital Health System just bought the rights to their to the Blue Zone concept because obviously they're the best PR that the Adventist health system has is based on this observation. So that's kind of the background here. But I think they're onto some natural experience observation, which has caught the attention of many scientists. around the world and many others. So I think they have a project in the United States where they come and advise communities on how to do urban planning, to adjust their urban planning strategies. And we're not talking about what they're going to do next year on a town, but what the plans for 10, 20, and 30 years down the road to restructure towns so you could create essentially a blue zone concept. So you may be wondering what that could be like. And that's like, well, put a park close enough to everyone so everyone can get out of their house and walk for 10 minutes to a park. You don't have to get in a car. So you're reducing emissions, you reduce crowd in the street, you're creating environments, safe environments for people to exercise or physical activity. So that's what urban planning around this means. So it's a very interesting concept that they're promoting. But today I wanted to introduce the idea from his perspective, and maybe anyone wants to ask any questions or comment about the confusion, the things that he said. He pointed out a number of them that could be confusing based on the recommendations we make and what the findings that they've had from this.
Dr. Lopez, I'd be curious to know if anybody has studied Orthodox Jews who also do the 24 hours, sundown to sundown, Friday night to Saturday night of no work. You know, you walk to the shul, everybody lives, most Orthodox people live within walking distance of their worship place so that they can walk on the Sabbath, walk on the holidays, and they don't answer the phone, they don't use the computer, they can read a book, they can play with their kids, this sort of thing. And I'm wondering if anybody has studied that in terms of longevity or health. They also have a kosher lifestyle. Meat is kosher, they don't eat shellfish, they don't eat pork, and so on. So I do know of any studies that have looked at them from the perspective of the blue zone or in terms of longevity.
No, I have not seen a study on that population, but that's a very interesting proposition. You know, I think about this, about the Hispanic culture in the United States, because they tend to have higher incidences of diabetes, obesity, and hypertension, but they tend to live longer than Americans. It's called the Hispanic paradox. And so one of the things they do is they go to church and they gather with family every weekend, and they, you know, they're very much about work. And so as a community, they have certain traits that could be aligned with some of the things we heard in the video today. So I think there's a lot of hypotheses to be made, a lot of communities and a lot of or existing in nature, if you will, ways of living that actually lend themselves to contribute to longevity. I think one of the elements he said at the end is they found the representation of all 9 of these in this community. So you probably need many of them, not just 1 or 2 of these things, to really make a difference in the years of living longer. So it becomes a healthy lifestyle, not just a better eating and more activity. It's not a single individual thing. What contributes to this effect is probably a coordination of the many.
Unless I did listen well, you said something about, you know, you said when your cell, I don't know if it died or then it comes, but it's not quite the same as it was originally. And you said something about if you had certain things, they step. I guess I'm kind of asking. I forgot what Dr. Brown was. Somebody you can reverse diabetes or whatever. So is that not true then, that you can reverse? You
can reverse conditions like diabetes and hypertension. It's reversible.
Did he say something different?
He said what he said was the cells in your body, which is different from the disease or the condition.
Oh.
The cells in the body age. And they age much faster as we get older because they accumulate damage in them. So our existence, so you wonder where did the damage come from? Well, one of the places come from is the radiation from the sun, which we can't do anything about. It's just low enough it doesn't hurt us in an everyday life, but it's high enough that it affects our cells on a lifespan. So cell turnover. So your cells, I think you mentioned every 8 years or something, cells change. So that means they're consuming, for example, stem cells from your body. Your body is able to make new cells because they are these stem cells that allow them to proliferate multiple times. When the older ones die, new cells can come up. Well, those cells get tired or exhausted over time, and they don't make more of. So then, at some point, the cells you got don't have the ability to regenerate anymore. And so your organs start failing. So that's what we see with aging. As people get older and have multiple diseases, their organs get insulted, if you will, from the diseases, and their turnover of cells gets exhausted. And so they're not able to regenerate anymore, the liver, this pancreas, and whatnot. So that's the concept on the cell side. And the slides that I have at the end do have a diagram that addresses exactly the question you're asking. But let me make a comment about reversal. If you have hypertension, you could have hypertension from a genetic problem. There's some people, because of genetics, have hypertension, and that's a very few number of people. There's some rare, what we call secondary causes of hypertension, but that's a very small number of people. The 96%, 98% of people with high blood pressure have it as a result of some environmental or lifestyle process, whether it's psychosocial stress, it's obesity, it's the diet with high salt. So if that's the reason why you have hypertension, that's what you can reverse. You can take, if you find what those factors are and you make the changes on those factors, your blood pressure will come down. And so in our programs for rehabilitation, that's what we do. And then when people change their lifestyle, we end up cutting out the medicine. That's what it means to reverse the hypertension. Same thing with diabetes. If the reason you have diabetes is because your diet, it's high in sugars and low in fiber and whatnot, high in calories, and you don't have a lot of physical activity to build the muscle mass to burn that sugar properly, then that creates the right substrate for you to have diabetes. Well, then when you do the lifestyle changes, the diabetes goes away because it's the product of the lifestyle. Now, some people have damage of their pancreas cells, or they have other issues that are biological at that point. They're not just the lifestyle. And those people, even if they do change the behavior, they still need some medication or some help for the diabetes. So reversal is never 100%, and reversal is never universal. It doesn't apply to everyone. Everyone has some difference in how much they can reverse.
I have a good example of that. There was a gentleman that was in rehab when I worked there that was blind, and he went blind because he had diabetes. And then he lost a bunch of weight, and basically he was no longer diabetic, but obviously he was still blind.
He's still blind. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, no, I mean, I don't see, I appeal to people all the time about this. In my practice, I have people who are actively having heart attacks and heart failure and chest pain. And so it's a different population than you hear in the community in this more of a wellness program. So I'm constantly appealing to people to make these changes. And, I would say at a rate of maybe 1 out of 20 listen to me. But recently there was a woman who I've taken care of for like 5 or 7 years. And she always came in a wheelchair, a motorized wheelchair, to see me. And she has coronary disease. And, in 2018, we put a stent on her for her coronary disease. In 2020, she started having more shortness of breath. And we kind of kept working, and can you do this? Can you do that? And no, doctor, can you, so I sent her for another angiogram. And my colleague at UC Davis, one of our, the head of the cath lab at this time, and, studied her and said she had disease everywhere. I can't pick which one to treat. I can't treat it all. I just don't think I can help her. And we sent her back to my office and then discussed the alternative to helping. And I talked to her about this. She went home. She changed her diet drastically on her own. She stopped eating all animal products on her own. In fact, she called because she said, I'm hungry and I'm losing weight. Is that bad? I said, the losing weight is not bad. She's obese. The losing weight is not bad, but the hungry part, I'm worried. Let's make sure the dietitian, we got her to see the dietitian. We help her, we arranged, we had to introduce, she went straight to plant-based, zero animal products. We brought in fish and non-fat yogurt into her diet to keep her from dropping her weight so fast, because we thought this is detrimental. She lost 30 pounds in less than 2 months. Her chest pain went away to the point that I had to stop all her chest pain medicine. She was on 3 chest pain medicines. Her blood pressure got so low, she was actually lightheaded, dizzy, falling. And she felt so much better, she threw away the wheelchair. She showed up in my office just this week on a walker. She hasn't walked on a walker in 7 years. And she said, I said, where's the wheelchair? They said, it's too difficult to get out. Now I go and do my own groceries. She had a person that went and did the groceries for her. Now she takes me to do the groceries, and it's too hard. She just can't carry the wheelchair. So I walk on the walker. So she's on a walker without chest pain off 3 medicines. She lost 32 pounds. And so we figured out how to keep her from keep dropping weight so fast. That fast weight drop was just too much. We knew that she was breaking muscle mass, and that's not as healthy. So you know, this doesn't happen to everyone. Not everyone, you know, that's the response. But if your lifestyle is in such a way that's contributing so highly to your situation, you know, when you make these drastic changes, you can see drastic response. That's in my treatment space. Here, we like to talk about how to keep us healthy for a long time. That's kind of what I like to build up here. But it does have in patients who are having symptoms, it can be pretty drastic.
The story of your patient is encouraging. Hopefully I can follow through, Dr. Yell.
Yeah, I have seen it. This does happen in practice. I'm going to share my screen now to show you why did I bring this up, and I want us to think more about. And it has to do with diet, nutrition, how to eat. If you saw, you know, he talked about the differences of the different communities of how they eat, and so. And then he talked about the confusion. So when you think about the confusion of what diet to eat, I just want to represent the confusion. So let's see, where's my sharing screen again? Yeah, but my not on, did I fall off? Yeah.
Oh, it's this one.
So now,
No, it's not. What did you, oh. You're still in the meeting? I think you're out of the meeting.
I fell off the thing.
Yeah. You have to join the meeting again.
We can see you, Tim, and Dr. Lopez.
I know,
Yeah.
he's on his own
My
computer though.
computer fell off the meeting. So let's see if I can get back in there.
Yeah.
Look at it. Still on the Wi-Fi. Got Wi-Fi. Okay, go.
Exit.
Exit out of here.
Yeah. Try real.
Never leave.
Yeah.
We just gotta teach someone else. Yeah, I don't know why. It
Not
might be
sure.
hidden behind all this stuff. Try closing down. Oh. You're not on here.
My computer's
You can-
freezing.
You can try. Oh, is it frozen?
Well,
Copy that number, the meeting ID, or you can go copy that into a browser.
yeah. Almost if I dropped out of the internet, but it looks like I'm still in there.
Just try searching like YouTube or something. See if it'll open. Type anything.
It's coming back. Yay.
Gotta love technology.
I think my computer's just confused.
Yeah. I think you might have too much stuff open. Too many tabs, maybe, and it might slow it down. But What are you trying to share? PowerPoint.
No, I was going to show. See if I can email it to them.
Yeah, try.
So I email it to them.
Email to Windows.
CWP.
Yeah. CSUS CV Wellness.
It's a new computer.
Should be running smooth.
Yeah, and it's just, I can't even email it.
You can't email.
Oh, it just went.
This is why we love apples. 'Cause
Right.
Yes, apples are our favorite.
Yeah. Did you get it?
Not yet. Should be coming through any second. With CSUS CV Wellness. Sorry guys, a little hiccup, but we'll get back in a second.
This is a very tolerant group.
Exhausted. You should have it now.
There it is. I'm gonna share screen on this one.
Yeah, can you open the link? All right. Okay, so to add to the confusion, this is the Newsweek, US Newsweek does these surveys for the best of. There's like the best medical school, the best hospital. So they did it for the best diet overall for 2022. And so this is what adds to the confusion. So
It's on this one, yeah.
it's on that one. There are 40 diets that they looked at. You know, who can keep track of 40 diets? And then they looked at best diet overall, best weight loss diet, best diet program, best diabetes diet, best diet for healthy eating, best fast weight loss diet, best heart healthy diet. Are you confused yet? There's so many diets, 40 of them, and then there's like 10 different things. And so you would wonder, you think, well, how do we have to be so specialized for diet? Like, why could there has to be so much confusing detail? It probably doesn't. There's probably a mainstream kind of way of eating that's in general healthy. And these are just all different human conceptions of that, by the way. So, so we can explore this a little bit. So let's look at, for example, so you were asking about diabetes. So let's look at the best for diabetes. Where's best diet for diabetes? So they have a panel of people, which was a group. I think there were some scientists in the panel, but not everyone was a scientist in here. This is not a medical thing. This is not a medical evaluation. This is not a peer review medical thing. But they kind of evaluated it for best for overall, best in terms of the acceptance or the ease of the diet, and then kind of the health, has like a health score based on what the reports are of whether it's healthy or not based on the condition. So they have Mediterranean as the number one, flexitarian as the second one, and vegan as the third one. So have you caught on to the theme of those three yet? They're all mostly plant-based in nature. Mediterranean is a bit more tolerant of fish and sporadic lean meat. Flexitarian is more tolerant of that, so people eat beef and all that. And then they got the vegan, and the flexitarian and the vegan kind of got the number 2 spots. There's 3 of them, but they both have the number 2 spot. So let's switch to heart disease, heart healthy. So now is the Mediterranean number 1, Ornish number 1. So there's 2 number 1s, and then number 3 is DASH. Anybody wants to guess what the common theme across these are? They're plant-based. Ornish is the closest there is to the Capagoda program diet. It's Ornish, which is 100% plant-based, no animal-based products.
10% fat.
And this is probably in the 15 to 20% fat. It's what it is. This is the one they use in intensive cardiac rehab to get that effect that I described on my patient. That's the effect you get when you do the Ornish program. In patients that, you know, we medically don't have more choices for them and options, then they're motivated to go to the Ornish program. And that the response of my patients, what people get out of the Ornish program. But, you know, they rank them equal to Mediterranean. And DASH is the conception from public health institutions here in the United States to help people to reduce their blood pressure. So this actually doesn't limit, again, the animal protein. It does favor the fruits and vegetables, legumes, and fiber and other things, and is very focused on the low salt components of it.
But what was the assessment of what made it the best diet, the best one that stuck to its claims? Or?
It's a mixture of what it sticks to the claim. So it says with emphasis, so you can click on read more here. I'll just give you a brief synopsis of it. And it says generally accepted that the people living in countries bordering the Mediterranean, not surprising secrets, active lifestyle with. So they're actually acknowledging that it may not be the diet, it may be everything else that come around with the Mediterranean diet. Somewhere it explained, it says something about what people.
It said pros and cons. Right there.
Nutritionally sound, diverse foods and flavors, lots of grunt work, and moderately pricey. So that's the con for it. So let's look at the other one and the other diet and see what. So let's see what it says for Ornish. 1977. Diet's low fat, refined carbohydrates, animal protein. The diet is low in fat, refined carbohydrates, and animal proteins. In fact, Ornish is no animal protein. But it's not just a diet, it also emphasizes all the other things, stress management and healthy life, group community interaction, which is also very similar to the programs from the reversal Capagoda program. So Ornish is essentially what's today is as close to the Capagoda program. Solid nutritionally, your heart will love it, or your heart will love you. Staying the course could be tough if you're aiming to reverse heart disease. Staying the course and not exactly cheap. So when you start looking at these, there's financial challenges to stick to any one of these diets. But what I'm trying to extract from this is they all have some things that are very common in them, which is the plant-based eating, the low fat from animals, especially if it comes from animal products. Very low, it's rare in occasion that you actually eat the animal products to be essentially, and that's essentially described the top 3 of all these categories of these diets. There's 40 of them. I mean, no wonder people are totally confused with what they ought to do when you look things up like this on the internet and you come up with 40 options and 8-10 different categories. Which one am I? If I'm a little bit large person and I have a little bit of diabetes and, you know, and I want to live for a long time, which one of these categories do I choose to choose a diet? If I click on 3 different ones, I may have different options. It just creates a lot of confusion. So I'm trying to kind of project the idea that it doesn't need to be so confusing.
Is that from US Today? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the problems where they say it's not cheap, that I think assumes that you're buying somebody's cooking something for you. You don't make, if you get the raw ingredients.
Yeah.
For instance, they're dirt cheap. And getting it so that they are, you know, your whatever.
Right.
You pay for that, and you pay for the fats and salts and other things.
Right.
And to say, well, it's expensive is what, tell me how you calculate that, because, you know, a cup of lentils is a whole lot cheaper than a round stick.
Most people don't know how to cook a cup of lentil.
Yeah.
and eat it. And
Pot of
so,
water and a pinch of salt.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a toughie.
I know.
I have no sympathy for that.
Yeah, but so you bring a great point that I struggle with in practice all the time is that food is costly and prices of food is going up.
Yeah.
And so to some people, in part, it's the challenge of how they envision they would actually go and buy fruits and vegetables. They go to the grocery store and a pound of oranges is, $2.50. Gives them three oranges. They eat 3 oranges, are hungry. But for $2.50, they can get a burger and they're not hungry. So they're actually exchanging for the $2 or $3 they can buy, what they buy for a fruit and vegetable may not be enough to quench their hunger, but they can get a fast food for that. And so they're killing the hunger on a daily basis, and that's the state of mind.
Yeah.
And so to those people, and we talk about this in our programs, is how do we help those people eat more healthy? And it is a tough answer. So any ideas you guys have or thoughts about how to construct in a budget, in a low budget, I should say, these simple meals and tasty meals for people to then, people learn how to do that. It would be a great addition to what we do every day.
I was just thinking about the concept of urban planning and how communities are constructed
Mhm.
in such a way that the people who are the poorest people tend to have all of these fast food
Mhm.
restaurants, and they're the people that have the most the most chronic health conditions. And historically, if you go to any urban environment,
Mhm.
this is what you see. So to me, that's the bigger issue.
Yeah.
Is how, and you mentioned that earlier in your talk about urban planning.
Mhm.
It doesn't happen overnight. It's going to take multiple years. When you've got like so many years
Yeah.
compounded on compounding, and you look at these communities and these obesity is unbelievable.
Absolutely.
Those hamburgers are good because of all of that stuff that they put in there to make them enhance the taste.
Right.
And so that, for me, that's a sociological problem
That's
that
right.
really trumps the cost factor.
You're alluding to the systemic factors that have constructed our cities and our environments that way. And they're deep and they're tough to crack when there's lots of people who don't want to see that there's systemic problems towards that. They're attached to poverty, to the deserts of food stores where fresh fruits and vegetables exist, affordable ones. That they're all correlated, and they're correlated to income, and they're correlated to race, and they're correlated to these social economical challenges. So it does take urban planning to change that. It's not going to take a supplement program. Supplement program is a short-term, short in vision of how to solve the problem, because you're not solving the problem, you're addressing the symptom at the moment. People are hungry, you give them a food stamp and you give them a 7-Eleven to buy a packaged hamburger. And then good luck to you. Or potato, I had a patient who was 459 pounds and he lived on limited income, and he had to take care of cousin, niece, children in the house with his limited income. So what did he eat? He bought the biggest bag of cheese puffs. That he bought food for the kids and the biggest bag of cheese puffs, and that he could afford for 99 cents. And that's how he killed his hunger. But he had 459 pounds to live with because of the poor eating habit. And he was an educated man who understood his problem, but had no financial strategy to get out of there and eat the fruits and vegetables and the healthier life that I would try to propose to him to improve his weight situation. So these problems are systemic, like you said, structural. Where how much you can afford with the little supplements that you have of the minimal income that you have. So,
Dr. Lopez,
Go ahead.
yes, go ahead.
why is it that I've looked up some of these diets before, and just one of them that was new to me just now, and none of them talk about salt content. And yet what you read seems like it's very high in salt. I found that with most frozen, ready to go things that are in the grocery store. Even
Yep.
the healthy ones, they talk about calories and fat, but not about salt. And the salt in some of them is, I'm allowed about 1,500 milligrams of salt a day. And some of these individual packets for one meal is 1,200 milligrams of sodium or 900 milligrams of sodium. There seems to be a disconnect between the problems of people and contribution that salt has to like things like high blood pressure and quote healthy diets and meals.
Yeah. So the key operating word here is processing. Any meal that is processed for you will have salt. It's just, the nature of it. Maybe not frozen peas and frozen fruits. They probably don't have salt. But for the most part, anything on a jar, can, or a packet, they use salt to stabilize the food. They use it to preserve it, to make sure it doesn't go bad and you don't get poisoned from it. So it is a necessary ingredient for the industry that makes this kind of meal. So when we talk about fruits and vegetables, we always favor the whole food plant-based strategy because they by naturally don't have salt. And so most of these won't talk about salt content when they're promoting that you eat fresh fruits and vegetables, because it's usually not, you can eat all, as much as you want of that with very little amounts of any sodium naturally in it, unless you add it to it, which then we ask people not to add to it. So, but when you bring processed food into the conversation, then yes, you will have this burden of the sodium and the sugar and the carbohydrates that they add to flavor things. That's the other component to, the food industry in America basically uses sugar as the way to lure people towards their product. And most of us fall for it, in a conscious or unconscious way. So and it is tough to overcome the food industry. They're very powerful. Our advertising, they're everywhere. You're hungry anywhere you are. You easily can grab something to eat from a pack or from a can or a jar. So in our lifestyle where we're in a fast pace and we have to be somewhere 10 minutes ago every time, it becomes functional to eat this way. So it's become our lifestyle. That's why most of the United States is not a place of longevity. It's because we've constructed our lifestyle into being against the longevity model. So we have 5 more minutes. Let's see if I'm back in here. Oh, can you stop sharing? Yes. So what came on the news that you may hear something about, which is totally related to this, to everything we're talking about, is going to be these headlines that I'm going to share with you now. This is one of them. The longevity diet. It's going to come out. So this actually came out of a paper, a scientific paper that just came out in a good journal, journal. So I was very curious. Well, I want to see the data on this. What are they talking about? But so it says, reveal the scientifically backed longevity diet that will boost your chances of living to 100. Plan includes chocolate, but cuts out red meat entirely and asks you to fast. Researchers identify diet that gives the best chance to live. Lentils, beans, and some fish central, as well as nuts and some dark chocolate. Red and processed meat is avoided and very low amounts of white meat eaten. That sounds pretty reasonable. That sounds totally unreasonable, right? From the video from the Blue Zones, that's what he was saying, those people. So this caught my idea, like, wow. And that they didn't say Ornish, they didn't say Mediterranean, they didn't say any one of those other 40 titles of other diets. So this caught my attention. So this is a diagram from the same article. This is the news article. This is not the actual paper where this came up. And I thought this cartoon was fairly good about catching this. So it kind of, again, gives you a plate and what should be on your plate. So, 55% unrefined carbohydrates, whole wheat bread, brown rice, pasta, lentils, black beans, kidney beans, barley, quinoa, bran cereal, oats. Very reasonable plant-based eating. If you've been to these educational sessions before, this is kind of on the ballpark of what we talk all the time, right? And when we have food sampling, this is the ingredients. That you would see. Mostly plant-based, dark chocolate and coconut. So not too bad, not too shabby. So I kept digging. I would say, I'm going to go and look at the paper. And then this is from the author of the paper. I looked at the name of the author of the paper. This is Professor Vader Longo. And this is from their school website. He's a professor, I think, in Southern California, describing this. So he talks about his goals in this article that came out. I want to optimize the chance for people to make it to 110 healthy. That's it. That's my goal. So to make it to 110 healthy, you have to solve it all. And it's a very ambitious plan. And of course, if you get cancer or you get diabetes or Alzheimer's, that's not going to happen, meaning living to 110. So then focus, of course, is on healthy longevity for the sake of reaching that goal. So he's saying you need to focus on this earlier before you get these diseases. Otherwise, not going to get there. The reality is 90% of people are never going to change what they eat. This is his proposition. Neither the quantities nor the type. They make small changes, but they're not going to make big changes in the long run. They could make big changes for 6 months, for 12 months, and then they'll go back. That's a reality, right? We have 1 million studies showing that so. So then people should start dealing with that reality. Pretty tough talking in there, right? And so he goes on what his proposals are, and I'll tell you that. So I looked at the paper. Here's the paper. It's from Cell. Cell is a good journal. In terms of science, peer review, this is a reputable journal. So what they did here is they review the evidence in the literature to support a type of nutrition that would support longevity. They're not advocating any one of those 40 diets. Let me just make sure. They review the science, and so this gets to the comment I made. This is it's hard to read. Oh, you are not seeing the same thing I'm seeing.
Is this a different? Stop the share on the chair.
Yeah.
Just share your whole screen. Or there you go.
So this is a goofy cartoon that is very hard to read. Let me just give you on the top, it's telling you what are the things that are going to contribute to longevity. Well, it's going to affect your genes, your body size, your age, your sex, and your health status. All of these are factors out of, and in addition is the diet. And so there'd be a diet component. And what they're saying is these things in purple are the things that favor longevity. The things down here are the things from aging and are stress that are pro-inflammatory. They're pro-aging or pro-inflammatory, and these are all the biological factors. And when you look at the way they depict it, is all the things that are here, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, and neurodegenerative disorders, they all cause inflammation, oxidative stress, all these buzzwords that you may hear. These are the biological pathways. Everything on the diet that they're looking, the evidence they looked at, these things, all of these things block every one of these problems. And that's what they did. They evaluated the literature. They look and see from the dietary research that's available, what things are proposed to block all these things that are pro-inflammatory and pro-aging here. So this is a conceptual diagram. So that's how they did this. They look at the different types of diet. That cartoon with the plate at the percentages. So they look at the research that shows that those percentages of eating that way counters and blocks the pro-aging stuff. And so let me read to you what their summation of the diet is. So this is based on that analysis. What they say, based on all the studies, in this review and representing all the pillars of longevity listed above, and it's all the biological pillar. Oh, you can see it. The indicates that everyday normal caloric, meaning normal calories, longevity diet is associated with low or very low side effects and extends the lifespan, which is characterized by mid to high carbohydrates and low but sufficient protein. So it's not a high protein diet intake that is mostly plant-based, but includes regular consumption of pesco-vegetarian derived protein. So it brings the fish. For example, animal products represent about 1% of the traditional diet of the record longevity Okinawans, the Okinawans from the blue zones. So they review that. And occasional meat or animal product consumption also characterize the populations of the Sardinians and Loma Linda area. Again, they review the data from the blue zones to come up with this. The benefit of such a diet are supported by evidence from calorie and protein restriction studies in short-lived species. This means animal studies, with the epidemiological data described in earlier sections, meaning the human studies, that are consistent with the evidence from large clinical trials. And I've shown that data here before. I've shown you the nurse study with 70,000 women and looked at the way they eat. I've shown that data here before. So that's what they reviewed. It said, does the low but sufficient protein diet or normal protein intake with high legumes consumption and therefore relatively low content of methionine and other amino acids contribute to the reduction in the levels of pro-aging factors? And then he lists the different chemical factors, which are what were in the cartoon at the bottom. So the short-term studies show that eating this way reduces the biochemical pathways that lead to the aging and lead to the diseases. And so that they're providing that evidence. So it's not like they're cooking up a brand new, a 41 diet. This is not the 41st diet and to put on the list. It's really a review of available literature, taking the substance, the distilling out what's common to all of them, and saying there is biological evidence to say that this is helpful for you. So I'm going to end there because the hour's up. And all I've done is bring more information and bring more evidence to support the same things that we're always talking in the program. And with that, I'll end for today. Any questions?
Yeah, quick question on that Professor Dr.
Longo. Mhm.
Yeah, she has a book. Have you
Yeah.
read? Do you have any?
I have not. His research is based on fasting. Fasting,
Oh, okay.
which I have not mentioned today, but we can talk at another time, the effects of fasting. There's an emerging area exploring the effect of fasting on top of not just, so his comments that people don't change what they eat are following the next paragraph about, so what he's promoting is the idea that you change a little bit what you eat, but then you start doing some fasting. And there are different ways of fasting that they're studying that could potentially be beneficial. Because the other thing we do is we eat a lot of food all the time. That's in addition to the kinds of food we eat a lot of food, and then we eat it all at all hours of the day without any significant relationship to the circadian rhythms of our body. So that'll be the topic of another day, the fasting component.
Thank you, Dr. Lopez. Welcome back. We missed you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Dr.
Sorry
Lopez.
for the audiovisual problems that got a little delay.
Might be one question in the chat.
It was,
Was already.
it was,
Yeah, oh, I'm-